He writes the following moments ago: I have just viewed the clip of the event which took place in Minneapolis, Minnesota. It is a horrible thing to watch. The woman screaming was obviously a professional agitator, and the woman driving the car was very disorderly, obstructing and resisting, who then violently, willfully, and viciously ran over the officer, who seems to have shot her in self-defense. Based on the attached clip, it is hard to believe he is alive, but is now recovering in the hospital. The situation is being studied in its entirety, but the reason these incidents are happening is because the radical left is threatening, assaulting, and targeting our law enforcement officers and ICE agents on a daily basis. They are just trying to do the job of making America safe, and he puts that in caps. Donald Trump has just responded to the cold-blooded murder by his own Gestapo ICE agents of a United States citizen in South Minneapolis. We showed you the clip.
Welcome to NTR Takeout. Please like, share, and subscribe. On January 7th of 2026, 37-year-old Renee Nicole Good, a United States citizen, mother, poet, and writer, was fatally shot by ICE, United States Immigration and Customs Enforcement agent in Minneapolis, Minnesota, during what they say was a federal enforcement operation. Federal officials, including Department of Homeland Security and President Trump, have characterized Good's actions as utilizing her vehicle as a weapon. So many questions that need answers. Let's take a look at these clips and keep Good's family and friends in our prayers. Pray for Good's wife as well, who unfortunately had to witness all this go on.
Ross has been identified as the ICE agent who fatally shot Renee Nicole Good in Minneapolis earlier this week. This is the same officer that was dragged and injured during an arrest that also involved a car last year. Here's what we know about him. Court documents show the first incident happened on June 17, 2025, during the apprehension of Roberto Carlos Munoz, a convicted sex offender originally from Guatemala. Ross got his arm stuck in Munoz's window as the driver tried to flee and was dragged more than 100 yards before breaking free. In court, Ross testified, quote, "He just took off at a rapid speed. At this point, I feared for my life." Ross ended up in the hospital with significant cuts to his right arm that required 20 stitches, along with another wound on his left hand that needed 13 stitches. A jury convicted Munoz last month of assaulting a federal officer with a dangerous weapon. Court transcripts also detail Ross's background, showing he's a veteran and was deployed to Iraq in 2004 and 2005 as a machine gunner on a gun truck. He joined the Border Patrol in 2007 and ICE in 2015, later serving as a firearms instructor and a member of the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force. According to DHS, Ross was part of ICE's Special Response Team, which requires a 30-hour tryout and additional training. Now, just 6 months later, Ross faced another driver who hit the gas as he tried to stop their car. This time, he fired his service weapon, fatally killing Good, who was a mother to a 6-year-old child. Ross's father, Ed Ross, told the Daily Mail, quote, "She hit him. He will not be charged with anything." Both Vice President J.D. Vance and Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem have defended Ross's actions.
That woman was there to interfere with a legitimate law enforcement operation.
This was an act of domestic terrorism.
But state and local officials dispute claims of self-defense.
They are already trying to spin this as an action of self-defense. Having seen the video of myself, I want to tell everybody directly, that is bull.
Whitney. DHS has confirmed that an individual has died. The alleged perpetrator was hit and is deceased. ICE officers who were hurt are expected to make full recoveries. Can you fill in the blanks, Priscilla?
Yeah, Dana, let's set the scene here. So in Minneapolis right now, the Department of Homeland Security has surged thousands of agents. There are around 2,000 agents that have been deployed to the state of Minnesota, and there have been ongoing operations, especially in Minneapolis. So that is what has been ongoing in that city and in that area. And this morning, the Department of Homeland Security says that they were conducting what they call these targeted operations. That is to say that they went out to a location, they had a target in mind. Over the course of that operation, according to their statement, ICE officers and one of these violent rioters they're calling weaponized their vehicle. This is according to their statement. And they also go on to say attempting to run over our law enforcement officers. And they call this an act of domestic terrorism. And they say that is what prompted an ICE officer, who they said was fearing for their life, to fire these defensive shots. And this alleged perpetrator was hit and is deceased. This is according to the Department of Homeland Security. I have asked the Department of Homeland Security if this was a U.S. citizen because we do not know the status of this individual who was in this vehicle. Now, of course, we have seen in multiple cities that the actions of ICE as they carry out their operations has prompted protesters and rioters at some of these operations. But generally, I will say, Dana, in talking to my sources over the course of the morning, there are a lot of questions here about these defensive shots that the Department of Homeland Security is talking about, because generally the policy for ICE officers to use to shoot would be if the subject poses, quote, an imminent threat of serious injury and or death. So there are a lot of questions here as to what prompted that defensive shot outside of the use of the vehicle. And it is these types of questions that would prompt also an internal investigation at the Department of Homeland Security, typically to try to get the answers as to what exactly unfolded here for there to be a fatal incident that includes Immigration and Customs Enforcement. And again, it is Immigration and Customs Enforcement that was involved here, according to DHS. Recall that there are multiple agencies that are on the ground doing these immigration enforcement operations, and even photos of the scene showed, at least after the fact, that it was both ICE on the ground as well as local police department and U.S. Border Patrol, which has similarly been deployed to Minneapolis to continue the operation. So we are still trying to seek more answers here, Dana, but at the outset, what we know is that there was an ICE-involved shooting, that there has been a fatality. We're trying to get what the status of that person was, that they were a U.S. citizen, but of course against the backdrop of this massive immigration operation.
After Renee Nicole Good was injured, Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents prevented medical personnel from providing treatment. Witnesses stated that when rescue workers attempted to enter the incident area, agents blocked them behind the perimeter line, citing the scene had not been cleared of security threats and demanding they retreat. Video footage shows Renee still lying unconscious inside the vehicle. Despite multiple attempts by emergency responders to signal for passage by raising their hands, they were not permitted immediate access. After being forced to wait minutes on the perimeter, Renee had suffered severe blood loss and exhibited weak vital signs, missing the critical golden hour for rescue. Her mother later stated in an interview that she couldn't comprehend why rescuers were barred from helping after her daughter had collapsed. The prosecutor's office has now prioritized investigating whether medical treatment was delayed. Authorities emphasize that any actions potentially causing treatment delays will be subject to criminal liability assessment. The truth behind this case continues to unfold piece by piece, and its repercussions are far from over.
Trump and Chris, simple message. We do not need any further help from the federal government. To Donald Trump and Kristi Noem, you've done enough. There's nothing more important than Minnesotan safety. I've issued a warning order to prepare the Minnesota National Guard. We have soldiers in training and prepared to be deployed if necessary. I remind you, a warning order is a heads up for folks. And these National Guard troops are our National Guard troops. They're teachers in your community, they're business owners, they're construction professionals, they are Minnesotans. Minnesota will not allow our community to be used as a prop in a national political fight. We will not.
Minneapolis. This video you're seeing now, Nick posted to X showing a different angle of the incident today. Nick, thanks for being with us here today. I know you've been working hard. You've had these different videos that have been seen on social media. What are you seeing now on the ground?
Well, I'll tell you what, Will, the reason that I have to do this live shot from here instead of within the actual area where their confrontation is taking place right now is because there's a snow mound, and it's very difficult for people to figure out where I'm doing this live shot from because Minneapolis police have pulled out, right? They will not save me. It's much like Portland. If I were to be attacked, they'd probably arrest me instead. And that's a scary thought. It's like, it feels like anarchy a little bit, and it's still early in the day. It's like 3:26 in the afternoon. We just got word that a protest is being planned at the federal building. And that's going to be taking place after dark. That's when things really, really get bad in areas like this. That's when we saw in like 2020, all of this stuff, like the Summer of Love after George Floyd. It was the same mayor and the same actions that were being taken, where they take the police out of the area and people are allowed to run the streets wild. I actually couldn't even get to the place where I wanted to do this hit from because a lot of these anarchists now have the roads blocked and police are nowhere to be found. It's devolving, man.
So to be clear, Nick, you're there, you're in Minneapolis, you're in St. Paul area. There's no police. I take it from you. I hear you clearly. There's no police in the area. But what about the number of protesters? Has that continue to mount. We saw live video of protesters moving from the site of the incident and marching somewhere in some direction on the street. Has that gained momentum?
Yeah, they're still marching north. That's what's going on, and eventually, it got to the point where I had been recognized and was being physically harassed, so I had to pull out of the area, and that's really sad to say. It wasn't happening as much earlier then because there were police around. Now, keep in mind, though, these people still don't have very much respect for police, although you see that the police that will back away when they start getting pushback from these leftist agitators that are out there, but the mayor is the one giving those orders, telling them to bail out and leave. So a lot of these police officers want to be able to enforce the law and keep the people in this is a residential area. These people feel very unsafe down here right now because it feels like anarchy.
No, I have to wonder how the homeowners feel after seeing what happened to the storefronts and businesses of Minnesota just 6 years ago, less than 6 years ago, how those homeowners in that area
we're only
feel.
blocks away from where the George Floyd situation happened, where if you still go there nowadays, the buildings are still charred. They're still, it still looks like total destruction, just like it did back then. It's never recovered. And people are worried that that's going to happen again. And all signs point to them wanting it to happen again. Will, they want this to devolve even more. You have Tim Walz on TV alluding to this being a murder, as well as the mayor with his inflammatory rhetoric on TV. Why? Because there is no better way for them to distract from the billions and billions of dollars worth of fraud that we've been here on the ground uncovering over the past 2 weeks. It's the best way for Tim Walz to finally be able to talk about something else and bury it.
And one of those people that's the center of that fraud story in Minnesota is Attorney General Keith Ellison. And he's now put out a statement on this ICE incident. It reads as follows. For weeks, we watched the Trump administration deliberately brutalize our communities. And now an ICE agent has fatally shot one of our neighbors. The president is deliberately weaponizing the federal government against the people of Minnesota to inflict pain and instill terror. We must stand up to this horrendous injustice. And in so doing, we must not stoop to Donald Trump's level. Right now, I think nothing would keep Minnesotans safer than seeing ICE leave our state and take their chaos, pain, and violence with them.
Observing ICE trying to take one of her neighbors. She was trying to get away as they were telling her to. She was backing up. ICE got in the way of her car and they began to shoot her. And she's no longer with us anymore. Now there are protests that are happening, and ICE agents are shooting non-lethal weapons at protesters at point-blank range. At point-blank range. Okay? Like, absurdities that are happening. Also, in today's news, the Proud Boys, 6 or 7 of them, have come together to sue the U.S. government for $150 million for a politically motivated prosecution because they were wrongly prosecuted. And the president is co-signing this, saying that they should be given something. All while we have just kidnapped the president of Venezuela. We are taking over their oil supply. The IRS now has a CEO. What? And the president is talking very aggressively about taking Greenland. Y'all, wake the fuck up.
She was scared. She wasn't trying to comply. I mean, she was trying to block traffic, and then they got aggressive, and she was scared, and she started to drive off. She was trying to comply with what they said to get out of here, and then they were saying, then they were trying to pull her out of the car, and that's when she got scared and tried to drive away. She got shot, and then immediately her foot went on the gas. She was I think she was already dead, but her foot hit the gas. She drove off maybe 100 feet and then hit the telephone pole and hit some cars. And then she was just slumped in her vehicle. And they wouldn't let anybody near her. They had their guns out and were saying, "Stay back, stay back, stay back." And we have a neighbor who was, he's a physician, and he was yelling, "I'm a physician. Can I please administer CPR? Can I check her vitals? check her vitals. Can I please get through? And they were like, no, absolutely. They said, no, shut up. We don't care. We have our own medics on their way. And then it was like 15 minutes before the EMS truck got here, and the EMS couldn't get their vehicle through. So they arrived on foot. They couldn't get through because of the ICE vehicles, to be clear. So they came through on foot, maybe 5 EMS people, and they checked her out for maybe 5 minutes, and then they carried her body like a sack of potatoes. They didn't even have a stretcher. They carried her out to the corner where they took her away.
Conflict, but they're so afraid of any type of conflict that they'll kill anybody they come across. Make that make sense. This big ass man was so afraid of this woman in her car cutting the wheel to get away from him, because that's what you can see in the video, cutting the wheel to get away from him, that he shot her 3 times in the head. In fact, he was so afraid of this woman and her car that he went towards the car, because that's what you do when you're afraid for your life. You go toward the threat. Just let us know the new rules so that we can abide by them, so that we can comply. Let me give you an example. If an officer tells you to get out your car and you don't, you can get shot 3 times in your head. If an officer tells you to stop walking and you don't, you could get shot 3 times in your head. If an officer tells you to stop talking, stop recording, and you don't, you could be shot 3 times in your head. Oh, see, now that makes sense. The reason why the majority of Americans feel defeated is because we're being bullied. One of the issues, there's many, one of the issues is we got a group of people in power that do not follow the laws, that do not abide by the same rules that you abide by, the same rules that they make up as they go. And then you got another group that's supposed to be fighting this group, but that other group, like a classic bullying situation, keeps saying, hey, they're not following the rules. Hey, they're breaking the Constitution. I don't know if you've ever been bullied, but if you haven't, let me explain. The bully's going to keep beating your ass. The bully's going to beat your ass. You're going to tell your mom's going to ignore you. The bully's going to beat your ass. You're going to tell the teacher will ignore you. Same thing happens with the principal ignores you. And so you got 2 options. You can sit down and keep on being beaten until you are no more, or you can fight. Let me tell you why Americans sometimes choose not to fight. I don't care what the millions of images and videos that you see on that screen that you're addicted to every day say. The majority of Americans are tired of this. The majority of Americans are exhausted.
I don't care whether you're left, right, conservative, Democrat, anybody who I meet and associate with that can look at that video of what happened to that woman in Minneapolis getting shot by an ICE agent. They can watch that video and still come out of it with that stupid ass line saying, well, that's what happens maybe if you just complied. These people are the worst. They're not worth having a conversation with. I was in the military for 6 years, and one of the deployments that I had to do for the longest period of time was Border Patrol. And for those who don't know, they have very similar rules of engagement when it comes to ICE officers. Regardless of even your opinion over the fact of, well, he drove a car at her, that whole entire process of them trying to open her door, trying to detain her, was completely illegal, so that is completely irrelevant. If a police officer just broke into your house and then framed it later like they had some probable cause that didn't exist, and then you as a reaction shot them thinking they're an intruder, that can be a similar situation here. But let's not excuse the fact that this woman wasn't driving at this officer. And even if you want to give that brain-dead opinion that, oh my God, he was scared for his life, even though he was standing to the left of the vehicle when he started firing 2 more shots. Reality is, he's the trained professional in this situation, and she's a middle-aged woman being surrounded by ICE officers who are trying to break into her car. I think it's a reasonable reaction to back up and then try to drive away. The first thing that man did was grab his weapon. He wanted to do that. And anybody, I don't care what political stance you have, who really comes online saying that line of like, well, shouldn't have drove, should have just complied. These are the same guy, like older millennial, who makes the same type of videos, but then when older millennial got arrested, he's pissed his pants trying to resist arrest. These are the same people that on January 6th, when they're getting told what to do, they don't want to listen and they're breaking into buildings. And then when a woman gets killed doing that, they're just an innocent woman who is a patriot trying to stand up for her rights. 2 things can be true at the same time. Maybe in a perfect world, yes, she gets out of the car, she listens, even though legally speaking, she has no reason to even be detained in the first place. Also, that can be true that officer 2 billion% wanted to assert his power, wanted to show who was boss in that situation, and he wanted to shoot that woman. because I don't care where you politically stand, if you can watch that video and really come back and say, yep, that was the correct way to handle that situation. There was nothing he could have done. Those people are not able to have a constructive piece of conversation about anything regarding their party because they will never hold their party accountable. It doesn't matter how much corruption is shown on their side. It doesn't matter how much evidence on the Epstein files there is. It doesn't matter if there's video evidence of a live murder. They will sit there and say whatever they need to do to not just admit that they are racist, they are homophobic, they are whatever they want to be.
She tried to run somebody over with her car, and the guy defended himself when that happened. Next question.
The investigation is still ongoing.
I said next question.
If you listen to the Vice President's press conference, you can see some key truths that should be known to all Americans, in that one, they are actively lying to all of us. They are claiming that Renee Nicole Good was some sort of radical far leftist who ran into an ICE agent. However, if you watch the video for yourself, or you can see this breakdown by the New York Times, you can see that she was most likely almost 99% trying to get away, or she was simply just confused by what was going on. This is highlighted by Good waving people to pass her, which is a common American custom, and one car did pass her, and another car that she waved forward, a silver truck, stopped because ICE agents exited before she was shot. Another highlight is the fact that the direction of her tires do not indicate any intent for her to actually run over someone. She was merely simply trying to get away. Under no circumstances, however, does this justify her being shot. Vance is also rationalizing this and attempting to dehumanize Good by claiming that she was a radical leftist. Being a radical leftist is not a crime in the United States. We have freedom of speech and a freedom of assembly. It's also important to note that this is so much more farcical than it was last year. Last year, the argument was that Trump was going to fund ICE so that we could go after the violent criminals and stop the problem of illegal immigration. Now, they are justifying attacks on people claiming that they are leftists. You also have every right to, and you honestly should feel insulted by the way that Vance goes out of his way to overly humanize and rationalize the actions of Jonathan Ross, the ICE agent who shot Renee Nicole Good, by claiming that he was going through some sort of psychological trauma or the repeat of psychological trauma. That is a very serious problem, and that maybe should disqualify you from service that requires you to carry a firearm. This is the latest of J.D. Vance defending things such as war crimes regarding Venezuela, pedophilia regarding the Epstein files, and many other things that he's done in order to seek power for himself. But the important thing to understand is that Congress isn't really doing anything to stop Trump from acting in his capacity, and it's likely that we are again going to see an escalation of violence now that I've heard that 2 more people have been shot by ICE in Portland, Oregon. So when an administration is acting this way, when they are acting with impunity, when they are openly denying evidence placed in front of you, what is the best way to respond? Well, that's where things get difficult. In my opinion, the most powerful thing to do is to assemble, and not just assemble, but also assemble with arms. In this situation where you're dealing with violence led by the state, then you must respond with self-defense led by the people. And that's something that scares me to say, but I believe it's becoming necessary more and more every single day. Another thing I want to highlight is that the current administration is most likely, and in my opinion definitely, is targeting Minnesota for lots of different reasons. It's politically motivated because of people like Tim Walz and Ilhan Omar, people that Trump actively despises, and it might also be because Trump is trying to invoke the Insurrection Act if there is more and more violence over time. The whole situation also has a lot of different factors that come into play. For instance, there's the factor of optics, in that you can utilize certain things regarding optics. For instance, you can record everything that ICE agents do, but how you portray yourself can also be instrumental in turning public opinion away from ICE. So for instance, during the Civil Rights Movement, Martin Luther King has black activists wear their best clothes. A lot of them are in suits and dresses. He does this because it looks ridiculous to see police officers beating up or hosing down activists who are dressed formally and acting non-violently. There's also what's known as tactical frivolity. You have people who look ridiculous, and then you have the person who says, arrest me daddy, in front of ICE agents. And that again turns public opinion away from ICE because it becomes very clear that they are just going after people they don't like, as opposed to actually trying to do their job. What's also interesting is that if someone was really trying to resist against any type of agency or really trying to impede operations, they wouldn't need to do a whole lot in order to accomplish that goal.